on LinkedIn?
I've got my phone on
We-
LinkedIn.
All right, we are live.
Okay.
Dr. Michelle Peticolas, welcome. It has been a day in the making for both of us. We've been talking about doing this for a while, and I'm so excited that we're finally getting together to share your knowledge with the world, with my world and my group of people. So I'm really excited about this. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Yvonne. I have been looking forward to this as well. The more I get to know you, the more I really admire and appreciate you. So this is such a treat.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And to our audience who's joining us on LinkedIn, on my Facebook page, and on my wall, thank you for being here. Now we're just going to give just about a minute or so. There we go. We have our first person who's joining us, our first guest. Welcome, Pauline. Thank you for being here. We certainly appreciate it. All right. So with Pauline being here, we know that there are other persons who are going to be coming. So I'll go ahead and introduce you. Dr. Michelle Peticolas is an international best-selling author, award-winning filmmaker, and founder of Second Chance Secrets, a professional training center that enables coaches, healers, and entrepreneurs to unleash their true brilliance so that they can attract premium clients and make a difference in the world. Now, for more than 25 years, Dr. Michelle has been assisting smart men and women in recreating their lives after loss through spiritual healing, psychosomatics, cognitive and gestalt psychology, coaching, speaking, art, films, and publishing. She's a featured author in Amazon bestseller Breaking Barriers, the #1 international bestseller Step Into Your Brilliance, and the international bestseller Animal Legacies. Again, welcome, Dr. Michelle.
Thank you so much, Yvonne.
Now, this is going to be an interesting conversation because one of the first things that struck me about you really is the fact that you deal with in an area that is comprised, it's a pretty challenging area. It's challenging for the people who are affected because there's grief, there's anger, there's sorrow, and there's despair. And you chose to focus on that group. Why is that? What prompted you to get involved in this work?
For many years, I was totally shut off from my emotions, except when they would kind of explode in tears or anger. But mostly I was shut down because at a very early age, I made the decision that the best way for me to survive was to become a people pleaser. And so and also not to experience emotions. And most people in this culture are taught to tamp down their emotions.
Mm-hmm.
Several wake-up calls happened to me throughout my life, but the big one was when I lost both my parents 6 months apart. And the very biggest one was losing my mother. It just really woke me up to how I'd been living my life, how I had been living my life through everybody else and not being true to myself. And at the same time, it woke me up to my feelings. There's something that happens when you lose a significant bond that breaks through the habits and the assumptions that we make about how we need to live life. And that's why I like working with people who have gone through a major life challenge, because they are open in that moment to the opportunity to have a real transformational shift. And oftentimes they have lost so much that they need to go somewhere else. But in that narrow window of opportunity, they can either get stuck in the past or stuck in a reversion of the past, or they can actually use that as energy, as a catapult to move them forward towards who they really are. Sometimes we don't realize until somebody's died how precious this life is and how little time we really have and how we never know how much time we have.
That's absolutely the truth. None of us know. We would like to, but we don't. So that's powerful. So you're talking about that little time. A time is like a window that you have an opportunity to help these individuals. So that's helping them as far as getting through the challenges of sorrow, guilt, despair, and so forth. But you also mentioned in your bio that I read a moment ago about helping people to reinvent themselves after a loss or a major life challenge. Now, how do you really do that? How do you achieve that? Because I think that would be pretty challenging. Once someone has had grief and sorrow, it's kind of like reinventing is turning them around. Explain that a little bit more to us, please.
In the process of healing the loss, the current loss, very often and usually it brings up all the losses, all the emotional challenges of childhood. And that's where the opening is. Because all the losses, all the grief are connected, particularly those that have never been addressed. And so when I'm working with a person around a particular challenge, in that moment of dealing with the current loss, we also have a doorway into the suppressed losses, the lost losses that we have forgotten about, but actually continue to operate in our bodies and in our minds. And so this is an opportunity for me to help them see the patterns, see the habits that are holding them back, and to connect them to their true self, who they really were before they were tamped down in childhood because of some kind of traumatic event. And what I've learned is that during those first 3 to 5 years, even small events can be very traumatic for a child because they don't have a lot to go on. They are extremely dependent and vulnerable, and they have needs that, at least in this culture, we don't recognize as being really important. We're somewhat detached about the way in which we deal with our children. We're always trying to program them instead of to realize what they really need.
You know, it's funny that you should speak about that because just earlier today I was in conversation with someone and I was talking with that we were having this conversation about how children are treated in certain cultures. And the fact that, say, in my home country, it's not unusual for mothers to leave their children with the grandparents and move to the city or different towns to get a job. And so the children are raised by the grandparents. And what happens is that they don't have this attachment to the mother. And most times the mother can't understand it. Now, in working with individuals, do you find that people are sometimes even surprised at the things in their childhood that come up when you
Yes,
help
they
them
are.
with these
Yes,
things?
they are. But generally, I help them to understand it, and it's always a revelation. It's not that they ever argue with me because it's always spot on because I
Hmm.
can see it. I can see it in their behavior, and and they bring it comes up out of our interaction that they reveal what's going on. That's one of my talents is I can get people to tell me almost anything.
Yeah, yeah. And, and it's really sad. You said this a moment ago that it's sad the way we treat children sometimes, not realizing the permanent effects that that type of treatment has on them. Now, coming into our something that has affected all of us over the past year, the pandemic. And there are some individuals who have managed to just kind of just glide through, whereas there's so many people who are extremely lonely, and the change has been very, very hard for them. So, in your experience, why is it that some people are able to kind of glide through challenges, whereas others?
First, I want to point out how difficult this pandemic is, that we are all part of a huge social experiment that has never been tried before. This social distancing that's been going on for over a year now, or almost a year now. And here were some things that I ran across just in the last week, because I think that in some ways that hitting that year mark is critical, and that some people are starting to lose their grip. The family Kaiser, one of the Kaiser Family Foundations did a survey in 2020 and found that 53% of adults in the United States reported mental health suffering because of the worry and stress of the virus. Sleeping, eating disorders, drinking, worsening chronic conditions. So this is having even increased domestic violence. So this is really increasing. It's putting huge stress on problems that were probably already there, but we had created distraction mechanisms to avoid having to deal with it. And I can talk to you in a minute about distraction and how that works. The other thing I wanted to mention was that Japan had a huge surge in suicides. Now, Japan tends to have suicides anyway, but this was the highest in 11 years. And in the month of October, they had more deaths from suicide than all of 2020's deaths due to the COVID virus.
Wow.
Yes.
That is sad. Really, really sad.
So I want to impress upon the audience out there how difficult this social distancing is. Now, I'm not saying don't do it, because of course you have to, but for people who are living alone, that are isolated, it is really difficult. And here's why. Human beings, as a species, are social animals. We are literally wired to bond. There are huge mechanisms, chemical and energetic, that ensure that the mother and the father are going to bond with the child. There are certain things like when you hug, you get a boost of oxytocin. There are biological reasons that support that, because as a species, we survive better in community. We actually, when you think about it on the animal plane, have very few resources on our own, and we depend on each other to survive. And that, even though we're a modern culture and we have all these things that we have accessible to, we still reside in bodies that have not changed very much in thousands of years, because evolution happens slowly. So we need each other. And now we're asked, not only do we need each other on an emotional level, but on a biological level as well. We exchange germs and we exchange bioflora with each other that actually improves our ability to survive, that improves our immune system. So now we're all isolated. We're sheltering in place. Now, if you have a good relationship with the people you're living with, you're doing better than the rest. It's a little disconcerting when you go outside and you see everybody with masks on, because that's distressing to the human body to see that. It actually is a sign that could trigger a fear response, because when have we seen people with masks on? The outlaws in the cowboy movies, right? Mm-hmm. The people who are the bank robbers, they're the ones who are wearing masks. So we've been conditioned to actually fear that. What I want the audience to understand is that we reside in these bodies, and they have their own survival mechanism. And part of that is the need for bonding, the need for connection. And when we don't get it, the body goes into a state of fear, a survival mode. And the three mechanisms that are foundational to any organism are fight, flee, freeze. You've probably heard of that before, right? Mm-hmm. So that's why we're seeing a lot of increase in violence, because people are frustrated and they're taking their frustration out on other people. Those are people who externalize. Then there's the freeze. Those are the people who get depressed and just, they don't go out. They don't go anywhere. They don't do anything because they are too terrified. And then there's the flee, which is the myriad numbers of distractions that we use and have used in the past to prevent ourselves from looking at what's really not going right in our lives. For example, drinking or drugs or texting or computer games or working all the time. Now, a lot of people, coaches, our biggest problem is that we work all the time. One of my clients who came to me, she came to me because her husband was threatening to leave her because she was a coach and she was working 70 and 80 hours a week. She had no time for her family. She had 5 children and she had no time for her family or her husband. And why? Because she hadn't dealt with a loss, a significant loss in her life, and she was avoiding it. And by being busy all the time, we really can avoid our feelings. If you're busy, you kind of feel a comfort in that, especially if that's your mechanism for handling emotional upset. I know this one because when I'm upset, I go in and I clean the kitchen.
You become a cleaning machine, right?
I do, and it feels good, because there's also a social response to that. It's like everybody is really happy if you clean the kitchen.
Let me pause here for a minute and welcome again Pauline Senior, Pamela Business. Thank you so much. They're watching us on LinkedIn. And I'm speaking with Dr. Michelle Peticolas. She's an international best-selling author, award-winning filmmaker, and founder of Second Chance Secrets. All right, Dr. Michelle. So that's significant what you're talking about. Yes, we are humans and humans are designed for connections. And yes, when those connections are broken, then the results are often negative. And sadly, with all what's been happening in the world today, and the negativity and all that, as people are embracing, a lot of people are embracing it and absorbing it. And so it becomes, suddenly everything is overwhelming. Now, I'm sure you see this and they feel they can't deal with it. And simple little things, or what we would normally consider to be simple things, trigger people to act in or react in a way that it's way out of proportion. But it's a lot of times, I'm sure you'll agree that it's the pen of feelings that they're the bottle of feelings that they have. And now it's like it's no longer just taking its time. Like a bottle that's there, it's just now bursting open and everything is spilling over, and not spilling in a good way, in a negative way.
That's right. And just consider that while we're in this social distancing, our usual methodology for distraction, like movies and going out to eat and going to athletic events or whatever it is that you do, go dancing, we don't have that anymore. And whatever you get on Zoom is not the same as face-to-face. So a lot of the distraction methods that we have used in the past are taken away. Now, the good news is that, yes, you're in a pressure cooker, and this is a time, an opportunity to work on the stuff that has been there all along and you need to address.
Absolutely. And, for many people, what I have found is that they don't have anything positive coming their way. And so it's as if everything is just like, negative force that's just plummeting your body. It's just imagine standing there and you have these tennis balls just coming and hitting you, and there's nothing positive that's coming. It's all negative. So this also helps me to understand why people sometimes react in such a way that it just doesn't make sense. Why would you have to react in that way? There was a recent something that I just read about in Broward County. A man just asked someone for a piece of chicken, and his reaction, which I won't bother to put in the recording, was crazy. The reaction he had to just simply being bothered. And who knows, maybe for this man, he doesn't have the money to even buy the chicken he's having. I know somebody's asking him for a piece, that kind of thing. We don't know the background, but people are like in a pressure cooker environment. But I do want to ask you though, just like the pandemic, people go through changes. Again, the perception is always our reality. Our perception is our reality. So how do perceptions impact us when it comes to change?
Well, it's huge, because what we believe, what we think about what's going on will we'll color. It's like a lens through which we see what's going on. And so if we see everything negatively, we're going to experience it negatively. And if the body experiences it negatively, that's what it's going to believe. If you can change your story, if you can change your perception, then you can actually make yourself feel better. There is this connection between the mind and the thoughts and how the body responds. And it's a two-way street. So sometimes your body is responding because of some past history that in which you get triggered, and your mind just follows with the body. And sometimes the mind has an attitude and it says stuff to you, and then the body gets triggered. And part of the problem with people who are going through grief is that they cry, they think about how terrible their life is and how victimized and how it's going to last forever, and they re-trigger the grief. And then the grief triggers more negative thoughts, which triggers more grief, and they get stuck in this loop. So what I try and help my clients to do is to stop the loop. The fundamental, or the first step you need to take, is to release the emotional energy. It's very hard to change your mind if physically you're feeling threatened. You have to release the emotional energy first. And that I wanted to just bring up for a moment here. We're getting closer towards the end of the half hour. I have an event happening on March 23rd at 4 p.m. Pacific time, in which I'm going to be sharing my best tool for managing that emotional trigger, that emotions. Because once you start to get a handle on your emotions, you can start to work on your mindset. And I call it body speak, because you're speaking with your body, and your body will tell you what's going on, but it takes some learning to do that. So I just wanted to let people know that I'm here for you. And this is a free event, and please come and join me and go through this healing process that will help you to get a handle on your emotions.
Very good. Thank you for sharing that. And what we can also do on the different, you can provide me with the information, or after we're done, we can add it on the different
Yes, we can add the link, because there's
at LinkedIn and on Facebook.
Absolutely.
So in my coaching with most of the entrepreneurs, but not all are, I talk about the importance of grit, resilience in dealing with situations. Now, how do you bring in this quality? How do you bring in resilience with the clients that you work with, so that they become more fluid or more adaptable to change? Because we know that change is inevitable.
Inevitable,
So how do
absolutely.
you help them to deal with that?
So I have a series called Out of the Box, and it was a Facebook challenge, a 5-day challenge, and it's got awesome suggestions for how to get out of the box. When you do things that are different, you are actually stimulating your awareness and you're stimulating your mind. Sometimes we get stuck in a rut, and that's really, really easy to do that in the midst of this sheltering in place, because everything is like the same and the same and the same. And so actually every day doing something that's different, that stimulates your body in a different way and gets you more alert and more nimble. It really does. It's amazing. One of the things
I like that word.
Huh?
I like that word.
Yeah. So one of the things that I was doing was I was drawing. I was doing drawings. I would go out and walk in the morning, and I would come back and I would do a quick sketch. And this is really unusual for me, because boy, when I draw, I want to have it perfect. But this is like, 3 minutes, you draw whatever it is you saw. And it was amazing what creativity that stimulated in me, not just in my drawing, but in everything, in the way in which I thought. So, of course, another way, so that's one way. So another way, of course, is meditation. Do you meditate at all, Yvonne?
Yes, I'm not sure if my meditation is as you meditate, but I do meditate. Yes, ma'am, I certainly do.
Mainly what identifies meditation is that you get out of the mind monologue and you actually your brain waves change into a different brainwave state. And this is extremely healing, extremely restful, and it actually changes your body so that it is more nimble and resilient. So that when triggers happen, you have more emotional intelligence not to just react.
I like the way you describe your meditation, your type of meditation. I do like the way that you describe that because it's positive and it's not emptying the mind. Because that's the kind of meditation I don't really, where you totally empty your mind and leave it blank and then you start. But I love the way you do that because I can see how you describe it because it can lead to a transformation really. And I
It,
also love what you say, Dr. Michelle, about the interaction between the brain and the body because we know they're connected and how the body feels is going to affect the mind and what the mind says is going to affect the body. And isn't it amazing how we can kind of sometimes control the way our body feels just by how we think?
absolutely. Absolutely. Yes, we can. Exactly. And if you just switch your mindset, you can change your state instantly. Now, I want to make another point that's really, really, really important. And that is that we as human beings do not live in isolation. We live in a social community, even if we're not seeing them. And maybe some of your audience or our audience will understand that we actually vibrate. I mean, hell, right? We've got molecules and atoms that are vibrating, right? And when the collective is in despair, we all experience it. And sometimes we have to learn to distinguish between our own despair and the despair we're receiving from the community. So just understand that right now we're going through a social experiment that is affecting everybody. And then, of course, what do? We get information from the news and we get information from our friends, and that affects how we feel as well.
Yeah, definitely. And now we have a question. Pauline is asking, describe meditation in your terminology. And I don't know if she got that from your explanation or she asked this before. Pauline, if you could type in if you got the answer to that question by what Dr. Michelle described, describe meditation in your terminology.
Let me say a little bit about it more. Okay. So,
Okay.
meditation is being present, being in the moment. Most of us are living our lives either thinking about the future or worrying about the past. When you meditate, you are in this immediate moment. So you could meditate just going out and walking and really focusing on everything that you see. And, if you're in a nature area, because nature has its own vibration and it literally calms us, that you can be in a meditative state. Another way in which I meditate is I dance. And when you are in that place of dance where you are letting yourself be moved by the music, you're in meditation. Another way in which I meditate is slow movement. So when you move and you are aware of everything that you do as you move and you're totally focused on the sensation of that movement, that's meditation. So there are many different ways that you can meditate. You don't have to do sitting, mindless meditation, but that's one way. And then there are other ways, but it's staying present in the moment. So there's one exercise that I do, which is sort of a mind meditation in which you breathe to the count of 5. You hold your breath to the count of 5. You exhale to the count of 5. You hold for the count of 5. And in doing that, each cycle you're counting up 1, 2, 3. Now you do that and your mind stops working And and if your mind starts to get away, you just start again. And that's a really, really effective way. It's one of the fastest ways that I can get into that meditative state, because I have something specific to focus on that has no emotional charge. It's just, and guess what? I'm breathing at the same time. So breathing is really crucial to meditation as well.
Okay, thank you. And Pauline said yes, she got her answer. So you expanded on that as well. And what I'm also hearing, what you described a moment ago, it's also being intentional about what you're doing. You're totally intentional and focused on something. So I guess being intentional contributes to your definition of meditation as well, because you're really focusing in on one thing. And you're right about how external things can affect us, because I am passionate about gardening. And I don't have to I live pretty close to one of the most beautiful gardens in America, and I haven't gone because of the pandemic. I now live very close by. But the point is that even if it's just a garden along my walk in the mornings, that, there are flowers there, it just brings a smile. And it gives you a sense of calm, gives me a sense of calm where I'm not, whereas something else might just kind of make me more agitated. But there are certain things that are just very calming. So if we identify those things that we know have a positive effect on us, would you say that it would be a good thing to kind of surround ourselves or to put ourselves in those places as much as possible?
Absolutely. Especially when you're starting to feel a little freaked out, that would be one of your tools. The other thing to remember is, what are you bringing in to your daily life? If you're spending too much time listening to the news, right now, the news is about selling. It's selling eyeballs, and it wants as many eyeballs. And what attracts us, unfortunately, and it's part of this biology, is sensationalism, conflict, and upset. And it's actually upsetting to our bodies.
Mm-hmm.
When we have too much of a diet of that, it literally causes fear in the body, because you're reading this stuff and you're saying, oh, this could happen to me. Or, oh, what's happening to the world? Or everything's going to hell in a handbasket. We're in chaos, or whatever. And it stresses your body. So you have to be careful what it is that you take in. One of the things that my husband and I do, we do not watch violent movies. We don't. Why would you do that to yourself? Why would you put your body through that?
Absolutely. And Pamela said, I love listening to calming piano music on YouTube. I found it to be very relaxing. And I'm a piano music fan too, Pamela. So I love that. I have my favorites. And yes, I could listen to piano music for hours.
It's
Yeah, I can
wonderful.
bring it out to television. It doesn't have to be there. Occasionally, I like a good movie, but give me my
Yes,
music in
yes.
my garden.
So if you want to take it a little further, and you don't have to, move to it. Even if it's just you move your arms and see what happens. Because then not only are you experiencing the music, but you are becoming one with the music. It's a very, very powerful technique.
That is awesome. Now, you have so much to share, so much more to share, but I think we'll save that for another time. But right
Yeah,
now,
yeah, yes.
let's see. Is there anything last minute you'd like to leave our audience with? And while you're sharing that, could you give me that URL? Do you have the information for your event? Because I could type it
Yes.
in right
Well,
now.
I have one of those transfer simple short URLs that will take you where you need to go. And it's innervoiceguide.com. So it's www.innervoiceguide.com. Don't put the HTTPS, because for some reason it takes you in a weird place. But if you put innervoiceguide.com, it should take you there.
Okay, so that's Inner Voice, GUIDE.
Yes,
Got
GUIDE, Voice Guide. Yeah, because when you do body speak, you're actually speaking to the inner voice. The inner
Now,
voice.
is that for your event?
That's for my event. Yes.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay,
which is called Body Speak.
okay. Dr. Michelle City. So, okay, so is there any last minute thing you'd like to share with us while I type this in?
Yes, without opening up a can of worms here, just to understand that we are going through unprecedented times. This is a difficult time, and to be really kind to yourself and compassionate to others. I had a colleague all wigged out over something, but I know she's all by herself and she's isolated. And sometimes people will cause crisis because they need attention. So
Mhm.
this is to understand how people have different responses to this isolation, and to reach out to people who are isolated. Instead of letting them get to the point where they have to blow up or create a crisis, reach out to those people that you know in your community who are alone, and spend some time with them on the phone or on Zoom, and let them know that you care. It would be hugely helpful.
Absolutely. And sometimes we have to be prepared to go beyond our communities because we may know of whether it's relatives or friends, former co-workers who we know they're isolated, they live by themselves. And yes, they no longer can go out to the places. Maybe they like to go to a movie once a week or that kind of thing, and they can't do that anymore right now. It's not safe to do it, although a lot of places are opening. So then it means we have to be others focused rather than just focusing on our challenges, because then it takes us out of ourselves and brings comfort to other people. So thank you so very much for all the excellent information that you shared with us. And we'll definitely go ahead and post in the other locations this event. And when is this going to be? Remind us,
Oh,
please.
it's the 23rd. It's a Tuesday. It's at 4 o'clock in the evening, and it should be about a half hour. So it doesn't have to take a lot of your time. I'm going to be mostly focusing on taking you through that journey of that tool of checking in with your body. So you can actually follow along. You don't have to appear. You can either come on Zoom or you can come in my Facebook stream, because it will also be uh, streamed on Facebook. Not
Is that
yet.
4 p.m. Pacific or
That's 4
Eastern?
p.m. Pacific. Yes. Sorry. I'm the San Francisco Bay Area, so it's Pacific.
Yeah.
So that means later for you guys in Hawaii, but
Yes,
early.
the
I
East
thought
Coast.
about you, Yvonne, and I made it early for 7 o'clock. So that's not so bad for you East Coasters.
Okay, well, thank you so much for being here. I really enjoyed our time together. And I look forward to carrying on this conversation another time.
Yeah.
And thanks to our wonderful guests who are here, especially I see Pamela Visa. She thanks you too. She enjoyed the interview. It was very informative. And I know we had Pauline Sr., who had good things to say about it. And you can reply to those later on.
I
They're all
will.
on LinkedIn.
Yes.
Thank you so
Yes. Thank you
much.
so much.
Have a good rest of your day.
Okay. You too, and everybody out there, have a great day.
Thank you.